Hey YNR fans! Waving hand, welcome to YNR Trends, your go-to spot for the juiciest Young and the Restless updates, shocking spoilers, and all the drama you can't stop talking about. From surprise returns to scandalous twists, we break it all down for you, every day. So grab your coffee, hit that subscribe button, and let's dive right into Genoa City's hottest gossip. Claire had been holding her composure for weeks, keeping her smile polished and her voice calm, but the storm building behind her eyes was impossible to hide any longer. She had been circling Audra like a hawk, watching her moves, listening carefully to the whispers around town, and waiting for the perfect moment. Audra thought she was untouchable, the kind of woman who could slip into any man's life, rearrange loyalties, and climb higher every time someone else stumbled. But Claire had learned to be patient. She had spent too much of her young life being underestimated, being written off as weak, damaged, or simply unimportant. Genoa City had hardened her, and now she could see Audra for exactly what she was, an opportunist with too many enemies and not enough sense to know when her time was up. The chance to finally take her down wasn't just approaching, it was right in front of her. Billy and Sally had been working tirelessly on their big event, the one they believed would finally put them on the map as a power couple in both business and society. For weeks, they'd been planning, rehearsing, smoothing out every little wrinkle. Sally had poured her creativity into every detail, determined to prove herself as more than just a survivor of one mess after another. Billy, still trying to shake off the shadow of his past impulsiveness, wanted this event to show everyone that he could stand on solid ground without blowing everything up. The room would be filled with Genoa City's most influential players, and if everything went right, it could change the direction of their future. But as is always the case in this town, fate and enemies were already working overtime to make sure the night would not go the way they imagined. Claire had been playing her cards carefully, and part of her strategy was making sure Audra believed she had the upper hand. Every smile she gave, every polite nod, every time she appeared to back away was calculated. She knew Audra's weakness, arrogance. Audra was so sure she was the smartest woman in the room that she never noticed when the walls began to close in. And Claire was ready to build those walls higher and higher, brick by brick, until there was no escape. Rumors had been circulating, whispers of secrets Audra thought she had buried. Claire had quietly collected information, confirming suspicions, following leads, and carefully piecing together the truth. She knew that taking Audra down wasn't just about exposing one lie, it was about unraveling an entire web, pulling on one thread until the whole thing collapsed. The night of the big event arrived, and Genoa City's elite filed into the venue. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation, people dressed in their best, sipping champagne and trading gossip as if it were currency. Sally looked radiant, her red hair catching the light as she worked the room with practiced charm. Billy stayed close to her, every bit the partner she wanted him to be, steady and confident. On the surface, everything seemed perfect, but under that glossy exterior was a tension so thick it was impossible to ignore. Claire stood near the back, her eyes scanning the crowd, waiting. She wasn't here for Billy and Sally's triumph. She was here because she knew Audra couldn't resist showing up, inserting herself into the spotlight, and making the night about her. And Claire was ready. When Audra finally arrived, all eyes shifted in her direction. She walked in as though the event had been designed around her, her presence commanding attention whether people wanted to give it or not. She smiled, she charmed, she acted as if she were untouchable. Claire watched her carefully, her heartbeat steady. This was the moment she had been preparing for, the moment she had been envisioning late at night when doubts tried to creep in. Audra didn't even notice her at first, too busy working the room, catching up with power players, weaving her way toward the center of the event. But Claire noticed everything. Every smirk. Every calculated glance. Every word that Audra delivered like a weapon. And Claire knew the time was coming to strike. Sally and Billy stepped onto the stage, thanking everyone for coming, presenting their vision, and soaking in the applause that followed. For a moment, everything looked like it would go smoothly, that the night would belong to them just as they had planned. But then, just as Sally prepared to reveal the highlight of the event, the energy shifted. A ripple moved through the crowd, conversations pausing, heads turning toward the entrance. Someone had arrived who wasn't supposed to be there, someone who would change everything. The surprise appearance left mouths open, wine glasses forgotten midair, and all eyes drawn away from Sally and Billy's carefully crafted moment. It was the kind of interruption that made it clear, nothing would ever be the same after tonight. And in the corner of the room, Claire's lips curled into the faintest of smiles. She hadn't orchestrated this particular crash, but she knew how to use it. Audra was already rattled, her confidence slipping as the newcomer's presence sent shockwaves through the crowd. This was the moment Claire had been waiting for, the perfect storm. She could use the chaos to make her move, to push Audra off her pedestal once and for all. And as the night unraveled, Claire realized she wasn't just in a position to take out Audra, she was in the best position she'd ever had. The intricate tapestry of betrayal, ambition, and fragile alliances that defines the world of Genoa City is perpetually in flux, a dynamic ecosystem of power where today's victim can be tomorrow's victor, and where the most carefully laid plans can unravel in an instant. The recent convergence of events, culminating in the dramatic crashing of Sally's Spectra and Billy Abbott's celebratory event, has created a unique and volatile set of circumstances. Within this charged atmosphere, a long-simmering conflict between Claire Grace and Audra Charles appears to be reaching its boiling point, suggesting that Claire could finally be in a position to decisively remove her rival from the board. This potential shift is not born from a single action but is the result of a complex interplay of character evolution, shifting loyalties, and the inevitable consequences of past misdeeds coming to light. To understand the current dynamic, one must first appreciate the journey of Claire Grace. Initially introduced under a cloud of manipulation and familial coercion, she was a pawn in a much larger, more sinister game orchestrated by her great-aunt, the inimitable Jordan. Her actions, particularly those targeting Victoria Newman, were born of a distorted sense of family loyalty and a deep-seated yearning for belonging. However, since being exposed and subsequently offered a path to redemption by the very family she wronged, Claire's character has undergone a significant transformation. The Newmans, particularly Victor and now Victoria, have extended a cautious but genuine olive branch, integrating her into the family fold and, most importantly, into the powerful empire of Newman Enterprises. This acceptance is the foundational element of her newfound strength. She is no longer an isolated operative, she is part of the most formidable dynasty in Genoa City. This institutional backing provides her with resources, influence, and a level of protection she previously lacked. Her motivation is no longer malicious scheming but a desperate, genuine desire to prove her worth and secure her place within this new family structure. Any threat to that hard-won position is something she will defend with a ferocity born of gratitude and fear of losing it all. In direct opposition stands Audra Charles, a character whose modus operandi is almost purely transactional ambition. Audra is a survivor, a shrewd and cunning player who understands the corporate battlefield of Genoa City intimately. Her alliances are fluid, shifting with the prevailing winds of power and opportunity. She has navigated relationships with Nate Hastings, Tucker McCall, and Kyle Abbott not out of deep affection, but as strategic moves on a chessboard. Her position at Jabot Collective, alongside Kyle, was built on a foundation of corporate espionage and a shared desire to disrupt the status quo, particularly Billy Abbott's influence. Audra's power derives from her intelligence, her ruthlessness, and her network of useful connections. However, it is a power that is inherently fragile because it lacks a foundation of genuine loyalty or familial unconditional support. She is, ultimately, on her own, and her influence is contingent on her continued utility to others and her ability to stay one step ahead of her enemies. Her history with Claire is one of manipulation. She saw Claire's vulnerable position and attempted to use her as an asset, a move that Claire, in her newfound clarity, is unlikely to have forgotten or forgiven. The critical juncture that has potentially tilted the balance of power in Claire's favor is the unexpected and explosive return of Kyle Abbott to the orbit of his former wife, Summer Newman, and by extension, the powerful Newman family. Kyle's decision to crash Sally and Billy's event was not merely a social faux pas, it was a seismic event in the corporate and personal landscape. His very public confrontation, his declaration of unfinished business with Summer, and his palpable disdain for the Billy-Sally Kitty Cat collaboration signals a massive shift in his allegiances. For months, Kyle and Audra were a united front, co-conspirators in their ambition to carve out a significant power base at Jabot Collective, often at Billy's expense. Their partnership, while likely not romantic in the traditional sense, was a meeting of like-minded and ambitious minds. Kyle's abrupt pivot away from this alliance is a catastrophic blow to Audra's position. It leaves her isolated at Jabot, where Billy's influence is now dominant and unquestionably hostile towards her. She has lost her primary ally, her strategic partner, and her shield against the Abbott family's displeasure. This isolation is Claire's greatest weapon. With Kyle realigning himself with the Newmans, driven by his complex history with Summer, his desire to be closer to his son Harrison, and perhaps a growing disillusionment with the cutthroat path he was on with Audra, he effectively becomes a potential ally for Claire. Or, at the very least, he ceases to be an adversary. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, and Kyle's break from Audra removes a significant obstacle for Claire. Furthermore, Kyle's return to the Newman world reinforces Claire's own position. It validates the gravitational pull of the Newman family, making her choice to seek redemption there seem even more astute. It creates a block within the family and the company that is inherently distrustful of Audra and her methods. Victoria Newman, who has taken Claire under her wing, is also Summer's mother. Kyle's return and his mending of fences with Summer inevitably brings him closer to Victoria's sphere of influence. This creates a powerful nexus: Victoria, Summer, Kyle, and by extension, Claire, all within the Newman empire, all with reasons to view Audra as an external threat or, at best, an irrelevance. Claire's position at Newman Enterprises provides her with the platform to act. She has access to information, to the ear of powerful decision-makers like Victoria and Victor, and to the resources of a global corporation. If she were to wage a war against Audra, it would not be a back-alley fight of gossip and minor sabotage, it could be a corporate execution. She could leverage Newman resources to undermine Audra's projects at Jabot, poach her clients, or expose any potential missteps she has made. Claire understands manipulation intimately, she was a student of one of the best in Jordan. She can likely anticipate Audra's moves, see her plays coming, and counter them effectively. Audra, now isolated and scrambling to maintain her footing at a company where her main ally has defected and her boss is her enemy, is uniquely vulnerable. She is exposed, and an exposed player in Genoa City is a player on the verge of being eliminated. The event that Kyle crashed itself is symbolic of the shifting tides. Sally and Billy's celebration was meant to be a triumph, a validation of their professional partnership and their personal growth beyond their tumultuous romantic history. Billy, in particular, has been on a journey to stabilize his life and career, and this event represented a high point. Kyle's intrusion shattered that illusion, exposing the fragile and often painful web of relationships that underpin every success in Genoa City. It was a stark reminder that the past is never truly buried and that personal history is the most potent weapon available. For Claire, observing this, it would serve as a lesson: victory is never final, and threats must be dealt with conclusively. Audra represents a lingering threat, a person who knows Claire's darkest secrets, who has attempted to manipulate her, and whose mere presence is a reminder of the person Claire is trying to leave behind. For Claire to fully step into her new life as a Newman, she may feel she needs to decisively defeat the specter of her old one, embodied by Audra. However, the situation is far from simple. Audra is not a helpless target, she is a seasoned fighter who thrives under pressure. Being backed into a corner may make her more dangerous, not less. She possesses her own arsenal of secrets and damaging information. She knows about Claire's past actions in great detail. If Claire moves against her too overtly, Audra could retaliate by publicly dredging up Claire's history with Jordan, attempting to undermine the Newman family's trust in her and painting her as an unstable and untrustworthy mole. This would strike at the very heart of Claire's greatest vulnerability, her fear of being cast out and her tenuous acceptance being revoked. Therefore, Claire cannot act rashly. Her move against Audra would need to be impeccably planned, subtle, and ultimately undeniable, a takedown so complete that Audra's credibility is destroyed before she has a chance to launch a counterattack. It would need to be a corporate and social annihilation, leaving Audra with no allies, no platform, and no credibility from which to strike back. The wild card in all of this remains the Newman family itself, particularly Victor and Victoria. Their support for Claire is conditional on her loyalty and her usefulness. Would they sanction a personal vendetta against Audra Charles? Possibly, but only if it was framed as being in the best interest of Newman Enterprises. If Claire can position Audra as a threat to the company, perhaps by linking her to the ever-scheming Tucker McCall or by uncovering a plot against Newman interests, then she would have the full might of the empire behind her. Victoria, who appreciates ruthlessness and strategic thinking, might even admire the initiative. However, if Claire's actions appear petty or personal, it could backfire spectacularly, making her look unstable and exactly like the person her enemies claim her to be. In conclusion, the alignment of circumstances has never been more favorable for Claire Grace to achieve a definitive victory over Audra Charles. Her own personal growth and integration into a powerful family, combined with the catastrophic defection of Kyle Abbott which has left Audra isolated and vulnerable, has created a significant power imbalance. Claire now possesses the platform, the potential allies, and the motivation to finally remove her rival. The dramatic crashing of Billy and Sally's event was not an isolated incident but a catalyst that accelerated these underlying tensions, forcing allegiances into the open and exposing the fragilities in various power structures. However, the history of Genoa City teaches us that certainty is an illusion. Audra is a cunning and resourceful adversary, and Claire's own past is a weapon that can still be turned against her. The impending confrontation is less likely to be a single, dramatic event and more a calculated campaign of corporate and personal warfare. Whether Claire can successfully navigate these treacherous waters and secure her position by eliminating her rival, or whether Audra's survival instincts will allow her to turn the tables once more, remains the gripping, unresolved question at the heart of this ever-evolving dynamic. The board is set, the pieces are moving, and for the first time, Claire Grace holds the advantage.